What you are witnessing are scenes from the horrible rioting that took place in the streets of Malmo, Sweden, around a week ago, and it then spread to other cities in Europe, like Oslo, London. This was in response to a far-right activist videoing himself burning a Koran. Now, burning a Koran is wrong, horribly wrong, just like burning a Bible is wrong. But the Pavlovian response of some Muslims to riot and destroy public property and cars and a city is a totally wrong response that shouldn't be excused at all. The riots don't make any impact on the far-right activists, but they do create destruction and chaos for everyone in those cities or areas. These types of violent riots and acts by Muslims in European cities has skyrocketed over the years. The far-right activist burning the Koran is actually a sign of the growing anger and tension in Europe between Muslims and non-Muslims. It is not going away. The irony is that many of the Muslims now in Europe moved to European countries in order to escape the violence and intolerance of the Muslim countries they left in the Middle East. Yet, instead of finding peace and prosperity in their new, free Western European countries, the violence and intolerance of the Muslim Middle East followed them to Europe. While many Muslims came to Europe for the freedoms of Europe, many others brought with them the cultural intolerance to turn their new European host countries into be more like the culture of the Middle Eastern countries they left, just with better economic opportunities. Religious belief is very weak in Western Europe, where freedoms of all kinds are celebrated, like the freedom of speech, the freedom to critique anything, the freedom to critique religion, religious figures, the freedom to drink alcohol, sexual freedom, etc. But many Muslim immigrants to Europe not only reject many of these Western European values, which they have every right to do so, but they started to impose their Muslim values upon their host European societies, forcing European cities and cultures to be more tolerant of their Muslim values. The situation has gotten so bad that some European cities even now have no-go zones, where anyone who drinks alcohol, dresses immodestly, or does anything against Muslim values can get hurt. Police even refuse to enter such no-go zone areas because of the violence that they, the police, will experience. European countries like England, France, Germany, and Sweden opened up their arms to the Muslim immigrants. They were happy to bring them in and wanted them. But for decades, they have turned a blind eye to the culture of intolerance and violence that some of these Muslim immigrants brought with them from their countries of origin in the Middle East. This Muslim culture of intolerance has now caused havoc to many European cities. The reality is that instead of immigrating Muslims enjoying the peace and tranquility of what once was modern Western Europe, those European countries that took in large amounts of Muslim immigrants are today different countries, where the sense of security for all citizens has dropped drastically. They are all suffering, including those Muslims who left the Middle East to escape the intolerance and violence of their Muslim culture back in the Middle East. Regarding no-go zones, Western European leaders and journalists often ignore the problem of the growing Muslim population in Western Europe, even denying that no-go zones even exist. In an article back in 2018, titled "Angela Merkel Admits That No-Go Zones Exist in Germany," that lie is busted by no other than German leader Angela Merkel. Quote, "Despite evidence of the existence of areas in Western countries, European leaders and left-wing media commentators have long denied and sometimes even mocked those who claim that no-go zones exist. But Merkel, who won Time magazine's Person of the Year in 2015 in part because of her open borders stance, mentioned their existence in an interview this week with German broadcaster NTV, as she called for a zero-tolerance policy on crime. Merkel said that People have a right to feel safe when they meet in public places. When asked to clarify, she specified that she was talking about no-go zones. As Merkel was saying, it means, for example, that there cannot be any no-go areas. There cannot be areas where no one dares to go, but there are such places, Merkel said. She continues, one has to call them by name and do something about it. Angela Merkel. Continuing in the article, the Associated Press reported that it had left fellow lawmakers speechless. The remarks quickly spread across Europe, fueling and encouraging nationalist, populist politicians who have pushed back against lax immigration policies. Hungarian Prime Minister Viktor Orban's government, which has been under siege from the European Union for its hardline stance on asylum seekers, hailed Merkel's comments as a victory. That's the end of the article. Now, Europe has a problem with its growing Muslim population, and ignoring the fact that it is a cultural, religious issue helps nobody. It is not just born and bred Europeans who are suffering from the growing Muslim intolerance, violence, and riots in European cities. Also, those Muslims who escape the intolerance and violence of the Middle East to enjoy the freedoms of Europe are suffering as well. Western Europe's continued tolerance of Muslim intolerance within their cities is a recipe of disaster for those countries. And it must stop.
Pulse of Israel, frontline videos from the Holy Land. Support our work by donating today.